Welcome to the CCCAP lecture series associated with the 2023 design competition. Speakers in this series have offered insight into a number of issues pertinent to the competition. Laura Blau will round out the presentations with her lecture today addressing our environmental concerns in her lecture entitled, "It's All About the Carbon Baby." So I'm really looking forward to hearing this. I'm Betsy Masters. I'm the secretary of the CCCAP, and I'm on the competition committee. Laura is an architect, painter, and sculptor. She is principal of BluPath Design, an architecture firm that consults in Passive House. Her architectural work reflects her sensitivity to aesthetics and craft, as well as her commitment to sustainable principles and science-based, conservation-first approaches to low carbon design. She holds certifications in LEED, BD, and C, Certified Passive House Consultant, and Passive House Builder. She is a regular speaker at major conferences on passive house and sustainable design. She's taught architectural design studios, and Laura and her partner, Paul Thompson, live in their historic passive house retrofit with their son and 2 cats. Laura will serve this year as one of the jurors for our CCCAP student design competition. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Laura, and we will hear your message today.
So first, I just want to say that I haven't maintained my LEED accreditation because I've concentrated on passive house. I use the LEED checklist in my mind all the time, but for my constituents, my client, LEED is not the best program. And I think it's important to know that there's multiple programs and different kinds of clients and projects are appropriate to different programs. If you do passive house with LEED and you do the minimum LEED requirements and you do passive house, you will be in LEED Gold. So we do water sense, we think about reuse and repurposing. We do a lot of things, but a lot of the passive house principles get us so far along, it doesn't make sense to spend the bureaucracy, the time and energy and the cost, because our clients are primarily residential, multifamily, and small community kinds of programs. So they're so just wanted to clarify that. So I'm honest about what my credentials are at the moment.
And I'm the one giving them to you, so.
That said, it's all about the carbon baby. And we're talking about lots of kinds of carbon, and we will talk about utilization carbon and embodied carbon and carbon in our bodies and all kinds of carbon things. So this picture is of from Japan, and this person is taking a forest bath. A forest bath is something that lots of Japanese people do because they believe it's rejuvenating. And guess what? Science has proven that they are right. So what we need to do is reconnect ourselves with nature. We are not outside nature, although we have a great impact. So humanity and nature need to come together. And so I'm going to be talking about 2 major concepts that I want you to burn into your brains and into your souls and into your psyche. Now why isn't this advancing? There we go. So the first one, holistic, and I'm not talking about hippie holistic, even though I was a hippie back in the 70s. But the term is really cogent, characterized by the comprehension of the parts of something as intimately interconnected and explicable only by reference to the whole. All right. So we are all interconnected. And that goes down to, why is this being so slow to move? Come on. Okay. Oop, there we go. I hope I didn't move it twice. You're not alone in your own body. All right. We are carbon, and we are also 1 trillion organisms in which make up our microbiome. If we don't balance and keep healthy that microbiome, the community that is us, we will be sick. But science is also showing that we'll be more anxious, we will be prone to depression. All kinds of things interact in a very complex way just within our own bodies. So you can extend that out to how we interact in our own communities and within the community of the environment that we live in. All those things have interactions. And the other thing that we are learning from science is about intelligence. Can you see this except for this? Can I get rid of that? I don't know why I can't get rid of that.
What are you trying to get rid of?
The bar at the top.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I'm trying to move this over, but it's not letting me. Let me see. View option.
Oh, there it is. I got rid of it. It's
Okay.
down at the bottom now. Go away.
Oh, there.
So sorry for the interruption, technical difficulties. All right, intelligence. We have believed we are the center of the universe and we're the smartest thing on the planet, right? Well, intelligence has been broadened, and we understand that there is a lot to learn about the intelligence of all different kinds of creatures, both warm-blooded, cold-blooded, and no-blooded. So, and of course, we're all made of carbon. So, and next. All right. So the other thing, if you've read the book, The Secret Life of Trees or other things, you will find out that plants also communicate with each other. The whole forest floor is an interconnected communication system where trees communicate with other trees. They are a community, and they actually assist each other and do welfare projects, such as when a dying tree knows it's dying, it sends signals out and gives its nutrients away to its neighbors. It also, trees know when there's a seedling, and they give extra nutrients and support to the seedling. Trees will know when they're being attacked by a pest or a fungus, and they will send signals out that lets others know to amp up their immune system against those things. So can we fathom a system of belief in these emerging realities? Jane Goodall learned a whole lot about primates and their community and their interactions with each other and her. And there's any number of wonderful videos if you want to believe that it's not just primates. But there's this one video of a wonderful man in India somewhere who, I think it was India, and he cared for for elephants. And then a situation in his life made him be far away, and he missed them for decades. He came back and he called in the river, and the elephants came running, and they hugged him and caressed him and were clearly celebrating his return. So can we imagine a world in which all living things are part of the community that we need to support? So that said, the next important word I'm going to give you is synergy. right? That's the interaction of elements that when combined produce a total effect that is greater than the sum of the individual elements, contributions, etc. Synergism. This is what we design with, right? We want to choose everything that we do. We want to have it affect, it will anyway, but if we are conscious about it and we understand the building science and the interconnectivity of things, we can amplify those effects. So 1 + 1 isn't just 2, and 3 + 3 isn't just 6, but it's 9, 12, 11, 15, right? And that's what we're trying to do. Learn the science, get it to work, the building science, the physics, work with it instead of brute force trying to make something do something against natural forces. Why do you want to listen to me? All right, well, this is me at about, I don't know, 5 or 6 at my grandfather, who was an architect. And during the Great Recession, around 2009-10, I was asked to co-write this book about him, right? So I learned a lot. But when I was 5 and he had us out in the back of his farm, and he said, you got to make me something. And he would give us a bunch of tools and bucket of nails and screws and wood. And we went to town. My brother was not nearly as excited about this as I was. So, well, I would digress. My mother had us built a house using a modified builder home. And my brother and I were each supposed to do job site cleanup. That meant, you know, boxes that had human feces in it and all kinds of gross things. But I couldn't wait to get there. My brother didn't like going so much. But I had caught the bug from my mother and my grandfather. I also knew you have to build community. And this is me at a Green Building United New Gravity Conference. And knowing that we have to have community and we have to exchange ideas and share our best practices and our worst mistakes with each other if we're going to learn how to build better buildings. To that end, I helped bring in 2013 the certified builder training to Philadelphia. I helped connect them with the Navy Yard and various organizations in order to have a place. So this is down at the Navy Yard. The little halos are the various contractors that I called, but these guys came from everywhere from east of the Mississippi down from Florida and from Maine. And so I have a little gaggle of my guys that I knew that if I didn't have a team that knew and had drunk the Kool-Aid, there was no way I was going to be able to build well, because we are a unit. I was the only woman and the only architect in this group, and the only one under 5'2 3/4. I got razzed like hell. You need to go outside your comfort zone and connect. That's where you learn the most, and you make liaisons, and you learn about both the design side, but also the sequencing and things that the contractor needs to know. And so you can design to their strength. This is the Italian Market Passive House. It is the first Fiat Plus project in Philadelphia. There have been other passive house projects in Philadelphia, but this is the first Fiat Plus. This is a zero energy home built on top of a warehouse. The warehouse has got, you know, cars and motorcycles and a kit airplane in it. And the house above has a front yard and a backyard for kind of a suburban urban hybrid. On the right side is the residential, and on the left side is another 2 buildings away from the Italian market, Mercantile. So it was an interesting project bringing that together. But let's get to your project. Your project is on the 36th parallel. This line is at the 37th, So you are just above it. One of the things you need to know to be a good sustainable designer is to understand your climate zone and then the microclimate. But you are going to learn that there's different opportunities and constraints and different strategies and priorities depending on what your climate is and your microclimate. Also, that this climate is changing. If you know the United States, look at all these different climates down here. The United States has many, many climate zones. And when we look at the climate zone that you're in, we actually have to acknowledge that probably in the next 20, 30 years, it's going to be the climate zone below it. Keeping that in mind, in your syllabus for this competition, you're told that you're in a temperate zone, 28 to 87 degrees. Most climate scientists will tell you that 87 is not likely to remain. You're going to have extreme heat, extreme storms. This is climate disruption that you are the generation that are going to be living through. So keep that in mind. So this temperate zone, which is sort of this, may not be that. It may be, you know, it may turn into that, which is arid, right? Cold and hot, but you are probably going to have extreme heat to deal with. So then there's orientation. You need to know, where is the sun? Where is it in spring and summer? Where is it in fall and winter? And how do you make use of it? How do you get free energy out of it in the appropriate seasons? And how do you prevent it from overheating and causing more energy use in other seasons? Program relates to climate. Depending on where you are is where you put your different program elements. This is of a house, but it could be the program for anything. And I'll tell you, the first thing I say about this is maybe it's oriented with a large base that is going to get the sun, but would that be inverted in the desert? And if you do, you want to shade. We're going to talk about shading and the difference, but this is really stupid, right? Look at where these bathrooms are. If you're going to be efficient, you need a core where all the water things are as close together as possible. Otherwise, you have to have a separate system because the piping to get across this divide is an energy waste and a water waste. So making tight cores is important. There's many things we could talk about. Each one of these slides could be an entire lecture, if not an entire program. So, all right, there's microclimates, right? Not only do you have different kind of shading situations if you're on hillside, or how close a building is, or wind effects, radiation from buildings, you know, the valley, you know, I'm in an urban valley. I'm in a passive house. This is a 175-year-old passive house unit, but we're on the bottom floor. This is north windows in front of me. My back is in a well because I have other 3- and 4-story buildings 5-10 feet away from me. And so I don't get a lot of sun, but I can still meet passive house. When you're shading, you need to consider how to keep the summer sun out and invite the winter sun in for our climate, or for this temperate climate in the 36th zone. Unless it's in the desert, then you might really amp up keeping solar gain out. Depending on where you are, you need to learn the heat days, the cooling days in your climate. This also has a light shelf as a way to bounce light deeper into the space in order to reduce your lighting loads. Let me tell you one thing about shading that most of you probably don't know, putting a curtain or a shade device on the inside of your building does not prevent the heat from coming in. It reduces the amount of surface it is heating up. So it reduces it some, but not as much as keeping the heat out from a shading device that's exterior. That is very important to know. There's lots of different shading devices. It's easy to shade from the summer. It's very controllable, not so easy to shade west and east light. So those need side shading. And maybe you have top and side, right? So consider and do sun studies and understand how shading works. And most of your tools, BIM tools and Revit and all those things have shading programs where you can study this and know exactly how deep does that shading device need to be? Does it need to fold down the side? What's going on? There is utilization energy, which how much energy that building uses, but we are just recently totally understanding embodied energy. That is the energy it takes to extract, manufacture, harvest material, process them, the energy it takes to take them to your site, the energy it takes to build, and all that embodied energy of the types of materials that we put in our project. Embodied energy can offset or amplify the efficiency of the building. So what's important is that here's an example. Here's fiberglass and here's cellulose. This is how much embodied energy these two things have. Cellulose has very little, impact, right? This has a lot, right? Just imagine if this was spray foam, it would be off the charts. In fact, most spray foam takes 20 to 30 years to pay off the embodied energy it takes to make it and extract it before you actually gain the efficiency that it is producing in the building, right? So these offsets are important. Concrete, steel are very high in carbon in carbon. We want to use sequestered carbon, cork, straw bale, hempcrete, cellulose, wood-based building for structure where we can, in order to sequester carbon rather than, so bamboo and cork are renewable, right? We can harvest them, hempcrete, we can harvest that every season. We could, get that. We do have to cut down trees. That has, it's still better to use that than concrete. So learning about the embodied carbon is important. Electrifying our grid. This is the future. There may be some other futures too. There might be hydrogen and other things, but right now, electrification is where we need to go. We need to add smart grids, which can be local and small, or hopefully soon are countrywide, nationwide. But that is important. So now let's get to passive house, which is my passion because it's a science-based approach to energy efficiency. So it needs to be super insulated, right? This building looks just like this cold car out in the winter. You would think it was an abandoned building, but it's a passive house next to all these leaky buildings where all the energy is leaking out of them. How do we do it? First, you have to make sure that you have controlled moisture in your building. This is my basement right underneath me. And this is the vapor control that we have underneath it. And up above, there's a perimeter drain, and water from our rubble wall drains down into this French drain and is drained away. It's completely sealed. Multiple layers of caulk are at the top to make sure this is air sealed and moisture sealed. This is air sealing. This is a smart vapor barrier, right? It is airtight but vapor open, and it knows the direction of the vapor drive. That's what makes it smart, right? So in other words, when, excuse me, all right. So in other words, if it's July 4th, it's a hot, humid day out, there is a rainstorm, and you've got 3 friends who are staying over and taking showers, you have a moisture load inside and outside of your building. The cellulose in these walls can absorb and store moisture to a certain degree until the air conditioning starts to dry it out, or the sun hits that wall and it starts to dry out. So it can bank some moisture. There are hydrophobic insulations like mineral wool that will drain water and don't stop being insulation if they're wet. Fiberglass doesn't do either of those. And when it gets wet, it stops being insulation and it's a host for mold. And the last thing we need to do is airtighting this, right? This is a super airtight, is you have to bring in balanced ventilation. This is an ERV, energy recovery ventilator. There are also heat recovery ventilators that we would use farther north or farther south. But where there is also humidity, like our climate, this is the best one. The climate that you're probably in will also be experiencing some moisture unless it's in an arid area. So this is insulated ducts that bring fresh air in and exhaust air out. And in this little magic box, they exchange their heat and energy about 84%. It's MERV filters, so this is great for COVID. It's great for allergies. It's what makes a healthy building. This is showing this incredible wall that we've insulated, and you can see the moisture never gets above this 80%. So it is not going to be a risk for mold. Rear of our building had crappy brick. It is a risk for mold. So understanding and doing high-grow, not hydro, but hydrothermal models, which analyzes the layers of your building, and you put a little moisture load here, and also it looks at the rain and the seasons. So this is hot and cold. So these are the seasons, and this is rainfall, and there's also rainfall, and this tracks, and you can test your wall for humidity, moisture. All walls get wet. The question is, how soon and how well do they dry out? So why are we doing this? Because standard construction is going to kill us. Energy Star is not good enough. It's a half measure. We need to be doing full measures. Here's where Passive House is without a solar array. And if we add a solar array and get to 0, this is where we need to be going, if not plus energy. And we need to be biophilic. As I said, that 15 minutes of exposure to nature lowers one's blood pressure, eases one's mind, and connects us back to this garden that we came from. And there's lots of examples of biophilic design. This is what you need to pay attention to in your outdoor spaces as well as your indoor spaces, views to the outside, the use of elements. So we can't be snails anymore and take baby steps. We need to leapfrog, and you need to incorporate all of this in a holistic and synergistic way to make excellent buildings that will be resilient and be wonderful to live in and healthy for us going forward. So the AI ethics used to have about 2 paragraphs on sustainability. It now has multiple pages. So, and I like to say, I work for Greta T, because at this point in my life, just turning 68, I realized that I've been partying in a carbon party for most of my life, and we've left you with the disaster of cleaning up. I'm doing what I can with the rest of my days to help and to do what I can to help you deal with this mess that we've left you. And I want to apologize for my part. Here we are, we're just a speck. Nothing lives forever. Human beings will not live forever. But let's try and make what we're living while we're living healthy, smart, spiritually connected, and and connected with nature and the universe. That's my lecture.
Well, thank you, Laura. That was really, really, really informative. And I hope that everyone listening to this will take heed. That was a wonderful summary of, some of the basics that we need to build into all of our designs, whether it's a design that we're working on in school, like this competition, or whether it's an actual project, or even our own house, like you showed us your house. And so I think this was really inspiring. I know, I was introduced to these ideas, maybe not quite as in detail, but to the basic ideas when I was way back in undergraduate school. And as I went forward, I didn't feel that, people in graduate school were paying enough attention, and nor in practice. So, I think the challenge of, trying to lower our energy usage and get to net zero, it's a huge challenge. I think most of us, in a way, in architecture are already drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak, that we understand it better than most people. But there's so many people who are not on board yet. So, this was very, very inspiring and very, very informative. So I want to thank you.
You're never too old to learn, and I am constantly learning. I'm more excited about learning now than I was when I was 20. So it's exciting to the career of architect is always got new material to learn. That's what makes it thrilling. You learn about a new client, you learn about a new material, you learn about a new method, and it never gets boring.
Well, that's true. And that's probably why a lot of us chose the profession of architecture, because every day is something different and every project is something different. And so I'm really glad that this is recorded so that we can go back and listen to it all over again. So I just want to thank you for putting this together, and your images were just really incredibly beautiful, not to mention informative. So thank you very much. And I guess really maybe the next time we all hear from you, it will be after the jury review. And we'll be announcing the other jurors at the beginning of March. So their bios will be on the competition website, along with the links to the recordings for these lectures. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to seeing the results, the submissions from the students for this competition. So thank you again, Laura. And thank you.
You're welcome. And good luck with your competition.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
All right.